Hello, everybody. I'm Tom with Gravity Learning, and I've always been the guy that gets things done. Give me a list, and I'm off to the races, top to bottom. I can get it done. And when I'm done with that list, I give myself a nice self-inflicted pat on the back because I feel like I was productive. And you know what? I was productive, but I found out that there's so much more to getting things done than just going from the top of a list to a bottom of a list. When I think of time management and managing our most valuable resource, time, a really lovely picture pops into my head. But before I tell you about that picture, remember, after the webinar, these great tips and tricks about time management, we are going to be here for you to talk about how Gravity can help you with people development, project management, time management, data analysis, productivity tools. But let me get back to that lovely picture. When I think of time management, this lovely picture of Mr. David Lieberman pops into my head. Why don't you sit back, relax, wait, don't relax, sit back and be astute and ready to learn, and use that chat and let us know what you're thinking as David goes through this amazing webinar for 30 minutes. David, take it away.
Tom, I love that idea of me popping into your head when you think of a thing. And it's so funny that time management is where I pop into your head, because I tell you what, that's not my nature. I'm kind of an idea person. I get all excited about things. I run off and do them. And I got a lot done, and my life was always kind of a bit of a mess. Right? Maybe you can relate a little bit to where I'm coming from, where it seems like priorities are always conflicted and having a hard time to be, knowing where to focus, right? There's never enough time, that there's a million little nagging things running around in your head. Email, dang, email is just a constant like, hey, check me, hey, check me. You know what I mean, right? Just getting that time to really focus is super rare. The thing is, that's what time management is about. Time management isn't about being good at time. Here's who's good at time: nobody. Time is not even like a real thing for human beings. We have philosophers who argue, and theoretical physicists who say that time is very, very different than the way that we experience it. And then there are people who don't believe in free will. I have one of my friends doesn't believe in free will at all. He says everything that you did is exactly like you would have done it, and everything that you will do is exactly like you will do it, right? And so for him, he's like, time isn't really a thing anyway. And that doesn't help me too much with my schedule, right? And so today, what we're climbing into is the greatest hits of real world time management, right? These are the things that you can actually do. If you read a book about time management, so often they'll be like, it's some sort of like time management nerd. Like that's what they're really into. There's only 13 steps to good time management. That doesn't work. Like nobody does that. And so today what we're doing is climbing a little bit into what really does work, what gets the biggest bang for the buck. The research shows that these are the things that work the best when they're in the Venn diagram of things that people will actually do, right? So it's that you'll actually do it and it actually works type of stuff. At Gravity, we're very into what does the research say? Let's make sure that what we're looking at is something real. When we're talking about research, we mean juried journal research, the kinds that are super exciting to read at night to go to bed. And then, okay, so what can you do with that? Because knowledge without skills, not super useful. Now, today is mostly informational. When you come and take, or when your team comes and takes one of our workshops, those workshops are super hands-on. They're more of a conversation, of an experiential learning journey than it is informational. Right? People make plans and try things on and come out of the time management workshop with planned time management. It's really fantastic. And today, if you feel like you want to take notes or ask questions in the chat, please feel free. We'll make a recording available afterwards. And if you want to hang out and ask questions and nerd out about this stuff, we're into it, right? All right, so let's start right here. And this is kind of an interesting place to start because it's being in the zone. You know what I'm talking about when you're in the zone? It feels really good, doesn't it? The zone is officially called the flow state. It was popularized and coined the term anyway by an American Hungarian researcher named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. It's a name that takes some practice saying if you see it spelled out. And he basically made it his life's work to go around the world talking about we're so much better when we're in the flow. And you know what I'm talking about, right? When you're in that zone, everything feels so much better. Well, how much better, you might say, David? Well, check it out. Here's the actual numbers around it. This comes from a 2012 study published in the Trends of Cognitive Sciences, and another one from 2000 in the Journal of Psychological Research. And it says that when you're out of the zone, when you're frantic, when you're not like vibing in that way, that we make 53% more mistakes, which I think we can all get. You mess it up, don't you? And it takes twice as long to do something, which I think is pretty fun. The biggest objection to time management that we hear over and over is like, I don't have any time for time management. You know what I mean? Right? I don't have time to sit down and like tweak all that stuff and do all this stuff. I'm busy. Let's go, 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 go. So here's the question for you. The question is, do you have 10 minutes? Right? If I said, hey, I'll give you $1 million to do something for 10 minutes tomorrow, you could for sure find the time. So it's not really about the time as much as it's about the priorities, right? And we'll see that coming up over and over in the world of time management, that priorities are a lot of what time management really does. Either way, when we talk about 10 minutes, I really mean 10 minutes. A study published in 2018 from the Journal of Personnel Review, which is probably super exciting. Those people are fun at parties. It basically breaks it down to when you spend 10 minutes doing time management activities, the things that we'll look at today, that saves you about 2 hours of wasted work, right? 10 minutes to 2 hours, that's no joke. Now, the way that actually breaks down, if you go looking in the study, some of it is wasted work. Some of it is you start something and then sidetrack and don't do that thing anymore. And then some of it is just how much longer it takes to do something when you're constantly in the middle of interruptions, right? You can feel that. That's about right, if we could pull that out of there. And so when you're moving forward, when we're talking about spending 10 minutes of time management techniques, part of it is just around, well, okay, and I'm going to forget. And the thing is, you're totally going to forget to do this stuff. Our life pushes us to go faster, faster, faster. And so what's also interesting is that there are studies about how long it takes to make it a habit. You guys hear about habit forming? Yeah, right? What have you heard? How long does it take to form a habit? People hear like 28 days or 21 days to form a habit. That's kind of the common sort of idea there. Yeah, that's total BS. That's not real. That comes from a trauma surgeon in the late 70s, super charismatic guy, who noticed that phantom limb pain was going away for people after about a month. And so he wrote this book talking about if you can change your life in a month, well, you should be able to, because these people are changing their lives then within that month as well. It's phantom limb pain. Habit forming is different for different things, which is not that surprising when we start thinking about it, right? And for these time management techniques, the research says that basically trying it for about 3 weeks. So if you try for about 3 weeks, that's when it starts to stick, right? So you might give yourself a little patience. I bet for me, it took way longer than that, right? I'm maybe not the norm as far as that goes. And the thing is that you have time management techniques already. We all do, right? We've all suffered and been like, oh, I better try something else. And so we start doing things so that we don't forget, right? If you think about your own life, the things that you do so you don't forget, so that you can make some order of your life. Are you thinking about that stuff, right? How many of you said, well, what I do is I make a to-do list? You know what I'm talking about? We make a to-do list and then we check it off. It's pretty common, isn't it? In fact, for most people, that's 70%. 70% of us, that's how we do it. That's our main time management technique, is to-do lists. And we find that it doesn't really work all the time, does it? I mean, it's better than nothing. It's just that to-do lists have no priority associated with them. They have no time associated with them. They're just a big thing in a bunch of lists. And it's the organization that we need to move things forward is not really there. When we talk about time management and the techniques that we'll bring today, sure, making a list is a good thing. And actually it's part of the technique that we will move forward. And in real life, when we really get into it, if we're talking about what's the most successful thing that you can do, it's calendar management. Really, time management is calendar management when we get deep down into it. In fact, what's interesting is that the absolute number one thing you can do, number one, is not making a list. It's not setting a deadline. It's not being incredibly good looking. The number one thing that you can do for time management is scheduling something at a specific time. So basically what we're talking about is if you get it into your calendar and say, I'm going to do that on Thursday at 3:00, that's the number one thing as to whether or not it gets done. And I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? Here's the thing though. Let's take a big old leap, a big old chunk right away if we're going to start talking about scheduling, right? Because the average American worker spends, guess how much? Guess how much time every single day doing unplanned tasks? Have you guessed? It's 2.5 hours. And you know what? That's kind of a tricky answer, because it's 2.5 hours just for email. The average American worker spends 2.5 hours a day in email. And I bet some of you are like, that's pretty low for me, right? An internal study at Adobe showed that the average Adobe employee spends 4 hours every day in email. Right? Email is not really negotiable. Like, you're going to check email. You know what I mean? How many of you have check email in your calendar? A bunch of crickets. Crickets have check email in your calendar. And that right there is what's wrecking every single day, right? Because you have at least 2.5 hours of unplanned tasks that you're going to do. And so when you intend to do all this other stuff, email pops up and pushes it out of the way. You're like, nope, I'm checking email. That's the way it goes. And so this, if you're only going to take one thing from today, this is probably it. If it's going to happen, if you're going to do it every day, if you're for sure going to do that thing, man, get that thing in your calendar, right? If you block off 2.5 hours a day in your calendar for email, now we know that your day really only has 5.5 other hours, or however many hours that you work, you crazy devoted to work kind of person, right? Now, what's interesting is that you don't necessarily need to do the email at that time. It's just that if it's not in there, we're being totally disingenuous with what's really going on. It looks like we've got 8 hours of time, and we don't, right? In fact, we never do. And so can you relate to that? You know what I'm talking about? Every single day, things get pushed and pushed and pushed. It's just because we've got all this stuff that we do that isn't in there. All this stuff that we do that we're not being, frankly, we're not really being transparent and honest about it. I like to show that at Gravity, we walk the walk. So this is my calendar. Here we are. Check it out. Right. This is, let's see here. There's you right now having that stuff. Right. Notice that every day I've got like lunch and email and walk the dog. I give myself 1.5 hours to do that stuff because I wrap email into it. And here is check email in the morning. Doesn't take me as long. Here's email at the end of the day. Now, do things come up and get stomped and take over that? Absolutely, for sure. Every day? No. And what ends up happening is because I've already got time blocked, I don't just assume that I can do the whole day worth of something else with something else. It's pretty neat, isn't it? All right, so if you're going to take one thing, that one thing is if there's some sort of recurring non-negotiable, things like I'm going to eat, I'm going to email, I'm going to whatever it is that you're going to, whatever, start getting that stuff in your calendar. In fact, you might make a commitment right now to climb into your calendar and make a recurring task so that it just shows up every day. You don't need to think about it. If you are watching the replay of this on YouTube, hi people, you might consider hitting pause and getting on that right now. Huge difference. And otherwise, the other biggest difference, right, is really planning and the way that you plan, right? Now, what's interesting is that when we plan on the daily, when there's daily planning going on, if we're planning to prioritize, you get a huge boost in whether or not things actually get done. Let's play Price is Right. In your head, if you want to think of what percentage of increase do I get in things actually getting done if we do daily planning for priorities, what would you guess? Do you have a number in your head? Here's the number. We'll see if anybody guessed it. It's 93%. We almost double the things that we get done when we do some sort of daily planning. Now, what we're going to do here is look at the daily planning type that was used in this study. So we're just going to basically break it out like this is how we do it. And what's important here is that when we're talking about daily planning, we're not really talking about like planning today. Like you get up and plan your day. A lot of my days are planned before that day. You know, hey, David, can we meet tomorrow? Nope, tomorrow is booked out. What we are talking about doing is a little bit of planning every day. So daily planning doesn't mean planning today. It means a little bit of planning every day. Making the sense? And here's what they did in the study. And earlier when we were talking about the cross of the Venn diagram with what's most effective and what people will actually do, this is what it is. Earlier when we were talking about it takes 3 weeks before it starts to become a habit, this is what we're talking about here. Right? Do you feel the build up? Here it is. It's 4 steps. Again, we'll pass out the video after the workshop so you don't have to memorize them. And if you want to write down 4 steps, that does something as well. Here's how it works. First, you check email, right? I don't mean you come in, you sit down and you check email. It's just check email before you make your daily planning, because sometimes that email changes the daily planning, doesn't it? You to-do list people, you're all excited because here you go, make a to-do list. That's where it is. You're like, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that. Now, the biggest problem, according to to-do list software, with the likelihood of to-do list stuff getting done, 40% of that stuff never gets done. And they say that the reason is because there's no priority associated with it. Now, if you had a to-do list and you stopped and you said, that's number 1 priority, that's number 2 priority. What I do is I just circle the stuff that's a big priority. I know some people who number it out or put stars next to it or something. Now that you've got this list of stuff that you need to do informed by your email and your brain, you've got the priorities so you can make sure the important stuff happens. And that's what you do next. Here's the last step. Ready? You take the priority stuff and you put that in your calendar first. So what I'm talking about is not necessarily talking about put it in your calendar like in the morning at 9:30. You're talking about get it on your calendar sometime to make sure that that priority stuff happens. This was originally from a plan called the REP plan, record and estimate and prioritize. And this is a simplified version of that they used in the study. It's what I do every day. And man, it works. It works. The secret of it all is to assign priorities so that you're getting the important stuff into your calendar. Now, sometimes people have said to me like, well, but David, then there's the low priority stuff that never gets in your calendar. That's right. That's right. And why do you want to waste all your time doing all this low priority stuff? The thing is that sooner or later, low priority becomes higher priority when it's not getting done. And all of a sudden, that's one of the things that we circle before we start putting it into the calendar. It's neat, isn't it? All right. So if you're going to put something into your head, the somethings so far are, if you're doing something like email as non-negotiable, get that in your calendar. Show a true reflection of what's actually going on. The second thing is on the daily, we'll come in and say, all right, what's going on in email? Let's make a list of the stuff I have to do. What's the priority? Let's get that priority stuff in our calendar. Pop, 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 pop. And then the calendar becomes our tool, the tool to say yes to things. I can help you with that on Thursday at 3:30. Thursday. Yep, Thursday at 3:30, right? Or you can move some things around. You can honorably say yes. You can use your calendar as an excuse to not be able to say yes. You're like, oh, I'm fully booked right now until next week. The calendar is what makes the hard edges. Now, here's the thing, though. You're like, well, I'll put that in my calendar. How long does that take? Human beings are weird with time. Daniel Kahneman is the father of cognitive biases that we hear so much about. That guy is rad. If you want to read or watch YouTube videos, Daniel Kahneman. And he says there are all kinds of cognitive biases around time. You're like, well, what kinds, David? Do you have them on a slide? Well, check it out. We tend to say, yeah, I'm going to sit down and do it and it'll be fine. Like we don't think about things going wrong, right? Right? We're also like, well, I did it before, so it'll be faster this time. And statistically, it's not. There is a pretty big difference between the first and third time and then the first and fifth time. And otherwise, the incremental differences are so small as to be statistically insignificant. And we also think we're not going to get interrupted. Like we're just going to be in the zone, right? So when we're estimating time, humans are bad at it, bad. Here is a secret. This one is amazing. It's how to get 68% better time estimates. Do you like her face? I love her face. She's like, well, here's the way you get 68% better time estimates. You don't estimate time, right? Instead, what you do is you estimate 2 times. Now, this is the big secret here. Project managers use this to break down time, and it gets you 68% more accurate time estimates. Instead of saying, hey, David, how long is it going to take? We take into account that we have all these cognitive biases, and we say first, hey, David, if you just sat down and did that, how many actual work hours go into that thing? And I'm like, let's say I'm writing up a 1-page thing. That might take me 48 minutes to write up a 1-page paper. And you're like, 48 minutes? And I'm like, yep, 48 minutes. And you're like, well, David, with the kid and the dog and the work from home and your boss, like, hey, can you help me? And the email going bing and that kind of stuff. How long now? That 48 minutes could turn into, well, I'll get it to you next week, doesn't it? That's the big difference here. What we're looking at are these 2 questions. What's the actual work hours that we're estimating? And then how long do you need on the calendar to actually get that stuff done with real life? People go, good question. If you start playing with that with yourself or with your team, that's how we get to more and more accurate time estimates. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Now, here's something else to consider, that the time that you schedule these things, because remember, we're going through email and then we're making a priority list and then we're starting to schedule stuff. Maybe we're making accurate time estimates, at least 68% more accurate time estimates. Like, well, okay, but when? Like, when do I schedule it? Don't you love it when people schedule an important meeting at like 4:30 or 3:30? You're like, but my brain. The thing is, it is your brain. There statistically and scientifically are better times to schedule important tasks, things that take brain, things that take creativity, things that take decision making, things that take reduction in fear. And it turns out that it's all because of serotonin. Serotonin is this wonderful neurotransmitter that reduces fear and basically just makes us think better. They think because it reduces fear. Everybody's like, yeah, everything's good. And so you make good time estimates. Thing is, we build up serotonin at night, and then we're not using it at night. When we wake up in the morning, we've got a lot of serotonin rolling, which is why they think statistically, that the morning time is more productive and you make better decisions and you're more creative and you have less fear, right? So if you've got to do invoices, do those at 3:30. If you've got an important meeting coming up, that's morning time, right? Statistically, it's right around 11 or so is when most people start getting their first dive, right? So of course, if your work life is different, right? What we're really talking about is after waking up and getting going. So the normal start at 9 a.m., we're talking about 11. Neat, isn't it? Here's the thing. This is the one big that we're going to leave you with. You took all this time, every day for 3 weeks to sit down and check email and make a to-do list and prioritize, get that stuff in your calendar. Maybe we're making careful estimates by asking 2 questions. Maybe we're putting the important stuff in the morning. For sure, stuff is going to come up and you're not going to be able to do it. I mean, that's life. Time management experts say that the statistics around it is about 20% of wiggle room every single day. About 20% will move around. So it's for sure going to happen. If you're uncomfortable with ambiguity and things changing, then you're going to have a bad time for the rest of your life because things always change, don't they? Don't they? Right? Here's the thing. Here's how we make sure those things get done. In time management, they love to talk about rocks, like the big rocks are the big things you need to get done in life, and the little rocks are the little details. And they talk about like scheduling the big rocks first so that the little rocks will still fit in and not take up all that space. And at the end of the day, you're going to have some loose rocks. There are things that didn't get done. The most important thing is to take those things in your calendar and move them, right? So you either move it right when you recognize you won't be able to do it, or at the end of the day, you kick that loose rock down the road and then it rolls back up again. And then maybe you kick it again. Man, there are things that I've kicked maybe like, I don't know, 7 or 8 times. And then I finally do it. And I'm positive that I never would have done that stuff. It's just that I kept kicking it. And it rolls up, and then sooner or later you get to do it. The most impactful things that you can do in the world of time management is, one, recognize that time management really means calendar management, is letting your calendar be the tool. If there's going to be something that you will do for sure, like email or lunch or whatever, get that in your calendar. Let's stop living the lie that that stuff doesn't take 3 hours or 2.5 hours a day. And then on the daily, we go through our email, we make a big list, we prioritize, we get that stuff, the important stuff in the calendar. If you're kicking those things down the road when they come up and you can't do them, now you're starting to take back control of your life. And it works. I'm the poster boy for it because, man, I was all over the place. And now people like Tom think I'm all organized. It's just, I just follow those steps. Hopefully you have enjoyed yourself here with us today. You know, at Gravity, we like to get together and focus on the science. And then when we do our regular workshops, we come back and we prove that they work with tight measurements. We figured out ways to measure down to ROI for things like time management, like how much made it worth it. And by the way, we have a program where, you know, we wanted to give back. So we said, why don't we let our clients choose? So new clients get to pick a charity, and then we go do a workshop for that organization for free. It's completely free. We figured that that's the way to give back. If you'd like to hang out and talk about how to work with Gravity, or just ask questions about time management, or wave and say hello, then please feel free. And otherwise, it looks like we're out of time. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Tom, would you like to say bye to everybody?
Yes, thank you, David, for that great information. And I'm going to implement some of those tools right now. So thanks a lot. And those of you who want to stick around and talk, or just chat about time management, we're here for you. Thanks for coming.